Okay, you're very welcome back to the Locker Room podcast. This is episode number 69. We just thought we'd do a quick podcast looking back at the World Cup. I think we could do a whole episode on extra time in the World Cup final on its own, but we're going to have a brief kind of overview over the World Cup because I think it's worth definitely doing. Before I introduce our guest, I just want to mention to head on to deelysportscience.com just for the elite coaching membership. And we're going to be running a good sale over the Christmas period. And another thing to mention is we're just launching a course as well with Sport Horizon, which is data analysis and data visualization, and it's Power BI for sports scientists level 1. So if you're using GPS or other data, this is the perfect solution for you how to visualize your data. So have a look at that as well. Okay, so we've got our guest Derek O Reilly. So Derek, I'm not sure did we actually ever play on the same soccer pitch together. We definitely played plenty of Gaelic football down through the years for Horswood in Wexford, but I don't know did we actually don the famous colours of Campile at any stage together.
I don't think we did. No, I think once you came along, I was dropped, and that was the end of me. So. You were my replacement,
yeah. So you were like Guardiola to me, Xavi. Are we happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
That analogy, yeah.
And PJ Banville was Iniesta then, who retired both of us. Okay, cool. So Derek is an Arsenal fan, local to me here in North London, an avid follower of, I'm going to say football, Derek, football, soccer, whatever we want to use, and a wealth of knowledge of Premier League, but also World Cup and international. Had plenty of trial back in the day over in England, and you spent a bit of time over here as well.
Yeah, over in Cambridge for a while as well. Yeah. So fun times. Yeah.
Good experience. Yeah, definitely. Okay. I suppose the only place to start really is, and we've called this episode the Messi masterpiece. So like we watched them from the very first day, and I remember even on our little WhatsApp group talking about the Saudi Arabia game, but even at that point you could see this was kind of a different Messi than we had seen in previous World Cups. That yes, he was older and probably had slowed down, maybe didn't have that searing pace that he had in previous days, but it looked a little bit more like this was the Messi of Barcelona a few years ago, even against Saudi Arabia, let's say.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's hard to come up with new things to say about Messi. Like, he has been the greatest for, as far as I'm concerned, for the last 10 years. I'd said he was the greatest, but I think this tournament he probably became more of a leader, I think, than anything. I think that's the side of him probably that we haven't seen before. He dragged the team along with him. He was a calming influence for the team. When they needed someone to put their foot on the ball, slow the game down, he was that. When he sensed the team needed a moment, he provided that moment. Like it was probably more leadership than we've ever seen from him before. But it was just a phenomenal World Cup performance. Like it's probably not as good as Maradona in '86, but Maradona was at his peak then. Messi was at the age of 35 and a few years past his peak, but still producing those moments like that made such a difference in the end.
Yeah, it was really interesting actually during the World Cup where some clips of Maradona were put up from the '86 World Cup, and you just realize like how good he was in that tournament. Because you're used to seeing that, you would remember better obviously than me, but you're used to seeing the hand of God, the great goal, everything like that. But I mean, his performance against Belgium in the semi-final, the amount of times he laid the ball on a plate for other teammates and they kicked it wide, kicked it over the bar, it would remind you of Messi, where he just dragged Argentina through games in little moments. And I like what you say about him just slowing the game down. It was like two different games were being played. The Argentina were flying all over the place, putting in brilliant tackles, really, really good organization around the team. And then the ball would come to Messi, and just with a little drop of his shoulder, a few little turns, laying it off, and all of a sudden, the game would move on, or Argentina, it would produce a chance or something. I mean, I don't know, have I ever seen a player produce so many chances for his teammates as Messi?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like that's like he does everything. He's top goal scorer, and he's creating chances non-stop as well. He's dropping into midfield, spraying passes out to fullbacks, stuff like that. It's it's incredible the range of what you can do. I don't think we've seen that before. I don't think we'll ever see it again.
Yeah.
But and as well, there was times in games throughout the tournament when Argentina were under pressure. Against Australia, they're 2 goals up. Against Holland, they're 2 goals up, and they look like throwing it away. But it's Messi that settles them down. Gets them back into the game. I think against Australia, when they were struggling at 2-1, he was phenomenal in those last 15 minutes, carrying the ball forward and still setting up chances. And like I said, he's doing it at the age of 35. And also, I think, like, to do it with the level of expectancy that's on him, this was his last tournament. He'd coveted the World Cup for his whole career. It was the one thing the Tractors had, the one stick they had to beat him with was he'd never won the World Cup. He'd never had a tournament like Maradona. And he's coming in at the age of 35 with all that pressure into the tournament. And to reach the levels he did, it's just phenomenal. Like, it's his greatest achievement. And it probably sounds silly to say someone win, or obvious that someone win the World Cup is a great achievement. But when you think what he's done in his career, like, to be doing that at 35, it's crazy, really.
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, the pressure on his shoulders. And I think in previous World Cups, he probably played with that pressure on him. You could see it was... Playing for Argentina didn't look like a joy for him before, whereas you could see in this World Cup, I think even the goal against Mexico in the second game, the shackles were off, and you could see how much it actually meant to him. Get that little moment, and it looked like, okay, Argentina weren't going to be knocked out, but he looked like everything was set up for him. The team were playing for him, and I know we'll touch on Argentina in a minute. It actually looked like Argentina were playing for their country, for the team, but also for Messi, and it kind of, it brought him to another level. Whereas maybe in other years, and we could talk about the manager's role in that, in other years, it nearly made the other players around him worse. In this case, I mean, I've never seen, in the first half of the final, I've never seen a team flying into tackles and getting around the pitch and looking for second balls like the Argentinian players. And it was wonderful to see, but before we go on that, like, for you, and I know obviously you're a really big fan of Messi, but where does that leave Messi now, like in the pantheon of greats? With I would have always thought, like many people, Pele, Maradona, and then you have your Cruyff, Beckenbauer, Georgie Best, maybe, in around there, maybe Zidane, Ronaldo, obviously, and Messi then coming on behind that, in the latter years. But where does that leave him now, do you think? And has it changed?
As I said, for me, he was always up there as number one. But like, he did have his detractors who said that he needed to win a World Cup. So I think he surpassed Maradona now. I think what he's done over such a consistent level for 15 years. Like, you talk about Maradona had a few good years, obviously a high level, like won leagues with Napoli and that, but Messi had 15 to 16 great seasons. Like, it's probably a bit hard for us to talk about Pele. We've seen clips, but we haven't seen full matches. So I think it's maybe a bit unfair for us to compare him to Pele. We probably would have needed to see more, but of players I've seen, like, definitely the greatest for me. And I was a huge fan of Maradona before that. I thought we'd never see anyone like Maradona, but that's something else.
And you always mention about Messi, just in comparison with Maradona, is the pure consistency, isn't it? Maradona had incredible years with with Napoli, winning Serie A. But he wasn't the most consistent player, and he wasn't even the most consistent player to, like, line out for his club teams and international team and everything. I suppose that the highs of 86, I don't know, will it ever be surpassed? It's hard to think of it. Who knows, maybe Mbappe next World Cup, or, we don't know, I suppose. As you say, Messi nearly achieved those levels at the age of 35, and he nearly did. But the club career of Messi, it's hard to see anybody surpass his achievement, is it? Even when you compare to Maradona.
Yeah, like, for 15, I think it's about 15 seasons, he's been averaging 40 to 50 goals a season, and probably about 20 assists every season as well. Like, it's not just goal scoring, it's a bit of everything. And he plays 40 odd games a season. He doesn't miss many games either. So he, even though he's getting kicked and that, he's getting back up, he's getting on with it. He doesn't miss games through injury. And to be fair, it's the same with Ronaldo. Like the standards the two of them have set, it's just crazy. I think it was 10 years ago, 2012, I think it was. He scored 91 goals in a calendar year. Like, we would never thought we would have seen something like that, that kind of record. And as I say, that's on top of creating chances for teammates as well. That was 10 years ago, and 10 years later, he's still producing. He has, I think it's 18 goals this year alone for Argentina, like just international football. He has over 30 goals this calendar year again, and 30 assists. And it just shows no sign of slowing down or stopping.
It's incredible. Even when you think of Haaland is a scorer, but not really anything else, Mbappe can do more, certainly, but I mean, even the thing I love about Messi as well is just that, like the penalty in the shootout. And it was in extra time, and like yourself and like everyone, it was the perfect story. It was 2-2. Messi is going to win it. It's like 86 with Argentina Maradona. Messi steps up, gets the winner. It was the fairy tale ending. Then all of a sudden, the lunatics of defenders for Argentina, like, you just knew they were going to give away a penalty or something, because they were diving at the ball. And I wasn't surprised it was a penalty, in extra time. Mbappe equalizes. Mbappe scores his third penalty in the shootout. And I'm thinking, oh no, Messi's going to miss this. Argentina are going to lose. And it's just going to be like a dampener on everything. And I just think, like, even the way he stroked the penalty home, it was nearly like it just gave the confidence to the rest of the Argentinian team. And I don't know, from that moment, I just felt, no, they've got it. They're just not going to be beaten after this. And it's incredible. He doesn't seem to feel pressure. And maybe when you're a genius, you just you do it because, that's what I do. That's what I'm here to do,
Yeah, and like the penalty summed it up in the shootout. Like, he was just so calm. And like we talked about the expectancy and the pressure that's on him, and to be able to remain that calm, and in the shootouts even more so. He'd already scored, and yourself, taking a second penalty in a match is a lot tougher. Keeper maybe reads you a bit more, has a fair idea where you're going, and the way he stepped up and put it away, like yourself, I was fearful that he was going to miss. He doesn't have the best record on penalties either, in the past. But like you said, I think the way he dispatched it, the coolness which he did, settled the team down as well. And as well, we've seen in World Cups before, and we've seen with egotistical players that like to be the last in a penalty shootout to get the winning penalty. There was none of that with Messi and Mbappe. Like, they wanted to be forced up, they wanted to set a marker for their teammates to follow on. And to be honest, to the two of them, like, there's not much ego there, when it came to win the tournament. It was such a cool penalty, really.
Just while we're on the penalties, another fella with maybe a slightly bigger ego, the goalkeeper Martinez. I read a really good Twitter thread today by he's quite a famous goalkeeping coach. I can't remember his name, and he breaks down the whole process of the penalty shootout and what Martinez does, and like, he just intimidates the opposition players. And obviously he did it, remember, in the Copa America final against Brazil. He did the trick again. He did it against Holland. You just kind of feel that this fella is not going to be beaten, and in ways it was no surprise to see Argentina again coming through a penalty shootout.
Yeah, and once it went to penalties, I was pretty confident Argentina would win it because of Martinez. Like, his record is very good on penalty shootouts. And, he does have those mind games that he uses, or shithousery, some people might call it, but, it does work. And on top of that, he's also a very good shot stopper. Like, it's not just the mind games. Like, he's very good at stopping shots and getting across to it. Like, even Mbappe's penalty in the shootout was excellent. Martinez still gets a hand to it. He goes the right way. He's very close to stopping it. He just has that in the big occasion. Like, he's won the Copa America for them as well. He seems to relish it. Like, he really enjoys it. The one-to-one with the strikers, putting them off, setting mind games. Like, he kicked the ball away for a couple of the penalties, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Eventually got booked.
Yeah.
But what it takes to win in a shootout, any little mind game that can work, you do it. And fair play to him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in just moving on to Mbappe, like, I suppose for probably 70 or 80 minutes, it wasn't his day. He looked frustrated. He kind of thought that, it's not going to be his tournament and everything like that. And then he just explodes into life. And from that point onwards, it kind of looked like every time the ball went near Mbappe, it's like, for me, I was like, oh no, France are going to score here, and like even the very last kick of the game in, I'm trying to think, like, was it extra time or full time?
90 minutes, where he went on that run.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, oh my God, he's going to actually score another. There was another one that he whipped in across the centre forward, the sub, nearly got ahead to it. The ball nearly bounced into the net across the goal. He just became a different player, and he kind of became the player that we've all seen in at times with PSG and France, where like this fella is actually unplayable, and in ways like rightly takes on the mantle now of the best player in the world from Messi, going forward and being the new kind of global superstar, I would expect.
Yeah, and it's also stepping up to the plate. I think he's still only 23, isn't he?
23,
yeah. And like he's like I said, he stepped up to the plate. He gets the hat trick in the final. He's taking the penalties because, I mean, if you remember a year ago, he missed the vital penalty in a shootout against Switzerland in the Euros, and and got a lot of criticism in France over that.
Yeah,
and, some of the French public were turned on him. And then this tournament, every time there's a penalty, he's stepping up to take it. He's not shying away from it.
Yeah.
When they needed him yesterday, with 10, 15 minutes to go, he produced the goods again. And like you were saying as well, with the Argentinian defenders, the way they are diving into tackles, like you thought this guy's going to get another penalty or two out.
I know.
He was taking them on in the box, like you said, that last one at the end of 90 minutes. He slaloms his way through and has a shot that's blocked, and he's just capable of winning games on his own. He's probably not as, when you think of Messi and Maradona and even Zidane, Ronaldinho, it's more like art, whereas with Mbappe it's just electrifying pace and and that's what defenders hate. So he's a bit different to the others, but still fantastic to watch.
Yeah, I actually really I have a liking for that kind of fast, powerful player, like Brazilian Ronaldo, Mbappe, and everything like that. It's a different. Whereas Messi is a technician, and an artist, and Zidane in some ways was similar, even though much bigger, more physical. I do like those players. I was just looking at the stats, the World Cup stats of goals. So Mbappe now has 12 goals in 14 games, which puts him sixth. Messi has 13 goals in 26 games. Like Mbappe at the age of 23 has 12 goals. Klose from Germany has 16 goals, which is the most ever. Brazilian Ronaldo then is 15 goals. Like he's kind of, I mean, he nearly won 2 World Cups by the age of 23. It's kind of incredible what he's achieving. Just I think we have to mention Scaloni, the manager of Argentina, and just like how he's managed to set them up. And like I usually prefer Brazil than Argentina in World Cups. It's just back to Romario, Rivaldo, Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, etc. But I have to say I loved watching this team, and we mentioned briefly just about that, the fight in those players. But I mean, you had players from Brighton, a sub from Man City, other players who are Otamendi, who was finished a good few years ago with Man City, but yet here they are winning the World Cup and looking like absolute world beaters.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is down to Scaloni. I think the job he's done is absolutely amazing. Like, he got the job as a part-time basis 4 years ago after they kind of struggled badly in the World Cup. Like, they were lucky to get through the group stage of the last World Cup. Scraped a win over Nigeria to get through, and then went out tamely in the last 16. So and they were an aging team, and then he takes over, won Copa America since, and then obviously win the World Cup. But like, he'd never managed before. It's his first managerial job, and so to do that is incredible. But I think, like you said, tactically he was just superb, and especially yesterday. You look at where you could get at France before the game, you're looking at it and you think, well, England and Morocco both got a lot of joy down France's left, you know, with Mbappe not covering back. Theo Hernandez is more of an attacking fullback. And England got joy with Saka taking on Hernandez, cutting inside. Morocco created overloads on the right-hand side and got a lot of joy there as well. So that was the obvious place to get France. And Scaloni picks Di Maria from the start, throws him in, and you think, right, that's what he's going to do. He's going to look to exploit that on the left. And instead, he plays him as an out-and-out winger, hugging the touchline on the right-hand side of the French defence. And I think that probably threw France a good bit too. You know, it's just, they're really exploited in the first half. Like, you look at the French fullback, Koundé, who's a natural centre-half, you know, and playing out of position as fullback. And a lot of the time, when the centre-half is out there, they like to defend narrow. They like to stay close to the other centre-backs. So Koundé doesn't like going wide.
Yeah.
Di Maria hugged the touchline. Argentina got ball after ball out to him. Koundé didn't know what to do. And times when he did defend narrow, it was up to Dembele to come back and defend. And
disaster.
And he doesn't want to do that. And then, you know, they get the first goal through that. Dembele's in a position where he doesn't want to be.
Yeah.
And Koundé's inside and he gives away the penalty. And then for the second goal, Koundé has to come across. This time Dembele isn't tracking back and Di Maria is left free on his own. So I think that masterstroke by Scaloni in the first half, France took a long time to come to terms with it. And then there was other little tactical things like Messi stopping deep and Upamecano was following him. And McAllister, who had the game of his life, was going in behind Messi into the spaces. Alvarez was going into the spaces. So, and again, the second goal came from that. Messi left space behind him that McAllister went into, and he was the one who squared it across for Di Maria. So, I think with Scaloni as well is in international football is so much different to club football in that it's game-to-game tactics. You're not going to get loads of time on the training pitch to have your philosophy and your ethos. It's working on game to game, and every match Scaloni had the tactics perfect, and he chopped and changed a lot as well. Like he changed formations a fair bit, so it's not just that this was his one tactic and he had that. You know, they tried something different every game, and the proof is in the pudding. They got better every match too, and which is what you need for tournament football. You know, you have to improve every game, and then peak in the final, and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, and even like, I mean, they had some absolute jewels in there in midfield as well, didn't they? Like the Paul was like, I don't know, he was like Sonny Corleone from The Godfather with the square shoulders, and he was bossing everyone around the pitch, and you could see a really good relationship, between him and Messi. He was kind of like the enforcer. McAllister, like you say there, was like superb in the final, but also right throughout the tournament. Fernandez, isn't it? The young...
Yeah, Enzo Fernandez. Yeah.
Yes. Who is he with, actually? What's his club at the moment?
He's with Benfica at the moment.
Oh, that's right. Yes, that's right. Okay, another great young Argentinian coming through Benfica. But they had some absolute jewels. And even just like, it's simple stuff, I know, to move away or move beyond just the tactics of just those players looked like they would die for the manager, die for the team, die for Messi. And of course, that can have a big impact as well, and it was really interesting to see at full time or at the end of the game when they had won, and they didn't run off crazy celebrating. They just looked like, first of all, they looked physically exhausted, mentally exhausted, relief, like they were all on the ground. They were all on the ground crying, instead of running to the fans and like crazy. It was amazing. And just to see the scenes in Buenos Aires like today and last night and everything like that as well, there's something kind of special about football in Argentina, and this team, they just really lived up to it, I think, didn't they? Like they were very, very worthy winners, I would say.
Yeah, and popular winners too, which is maybe a bit unusual for Argentina, but obviously a lot of that is down to Messi as well. Everyone wants to see Messi win one, but yeah, it's their attitude, I think, you have to admire as well. Like you're saying, the midfield, like the Paul, I've never seen him work as hard the way he ran himself into the ground. Like he looked exhausted from about the 60th minute, but he kept going. Yeah. Fernandez, McAllister midfield, like they're doing Messi's running a lot of them. He's having to do a lot of walking really, but he is, and the players around him are doing the running. But on top of that, as well as doing Messi running, they were also closing down Griezmann in midfield for France, like who had been a major influence for them throughout the tournament.
Yeah.
And he never got a kick of the ball yesterday, and down to that midfield, working so hard, closing down spaces. Every time Griezmann got on the ball, pressure was on him straight away.
Yeah.
And you're not surprised by those midfielders at the end of the game, they're collapsing because they put in some shift to be fair to them. And it kind of typifies Argentinian football as well. Like, you have your artists like Messi and Maradona, but they have nutcases as well, and lads who will run non-stop. And they love their country, which is part of it as well. Like,
they do
want to do it for their country.
And even I saw a few people like complaining about Argentinian celebration both after the Dutch game and also like in the dressing room. Some pictures came out of them. It might have been after the semi-final as well. And also like, some of the songs they were singing to the journalists and England and the Falklands and like Argentina's not Europe. They're different. They have a different culture and they're passionate. And like how can Otamendi play so inspired at the age of whatever age he is after being dropped by Man City years ago? There's something special there amongst that group of players and playing for their national team. And like, I wouldn't be critical of that kind of thing at all, and I suppose as well, this is elite sport, isn't it? This is like, you see the fine lines between winning and losing and getting legendary status and not. So, when Otamendi goes and celebrates in front of the Dutch players after the penalties, I think, well, so what? I mean, that's kind of what's made him the player that he is,
Yeah, and just so many of those players need that passion. Without it, they're not half the players. And yourself, you use anything to get yourself fired up for a game, whatever it takes, you get yourself fired up. Yeah. And a lot of these Argentinian players, they need that kind of confrontation, they need that passion. And it works for them. And I think Otamendi, like, we can't believe he's still playing in World Cups, never mind winning them.
I know.
You have Romero flying into tackles at the back as well. Martinez in Man United didn't get a run yet, didn't get out yesterday, but he's the exact same. They'll do what it takes to defend, and then Martinez in the shootout, the exact same. It's sport. It's sport. You do what it takes to win, and you can justify it. If you're the winner's medal, you can justify it. And some of it is unpleasant. That shootout with Holland, it wasn't great to see a lot of it, but I'm sure Holland brought the same stuff themselves. Like, apparently there was a lot of talk between the two during the shootout, so you can understand it. It's a passionate sport, and it's going to happen.
Yeah, of course. Give us a look at your River Plate jersey anyway.
There it is. Yeah.
Very nice. And old school as well. You called. I thought you made a really interesting point. So we had our little World Cup kind of WhatsApp group where we were chatting through the games and stuff, and do loads of work at 10 o'clock in the morning all through the day. Best World Cup ever. You called France the West Germany of the modern era. So what did you mean by that?
Well, when we were younger and coming into tournaments, you'd name your teams you wanted to win or expected to win, and it was the Brazils and even France back then, like Platini and players like that, who you wanted to win tournaments. And then you thought, well, actually West Germany will come along and they won't play fantastic football, but they'll know how to beat teams. They'll spoil the party on favourites, and they'll get to a final or whatever without actually having any outstanding games or outstanding talents, and France, I felt, are a bit like that nowadays. They're not playing fantastic football. Can be a bit dull at times under Deschamps. I think he doesn't let them off the leash too often. But they know how to win games. They know how to get to finals. They know how to spoil the party as well without being fantastic. They just workmanlike and get to the final. And to be honest, I had written them off before the tournament because of the injuries they've had. Benzema has been the best player in the world this year. Yeah. And if you consider a country without the best player in the world, you think they're never going to get to the final. They're missing the best player in the world.
Pogba as well, even.
Yeah, you have Kante, Pogba,
I can't take Jesus.
Even Nkunku would have played probably a prominent role as well. You know, he's been in sensational form the last year. So it was a lot of injuries. And yes, France turn up, just whatever squad they have, they win the games, they get to the final. And they finished the final yesterday with a very young team. Like the age profile of that team is very young, and they're going to be around for a long time. And you know, I'd hope they get a manager who kind of lets them play a bit more and be a bit more attacking. But even if not, they're going to be thereabouts, and they're going to get to finals. And, you know, great youngsters coming through again. You know, you look at the whole defense. I think they're all in their early 20s or mid 20s.
And I know, and
on top of that, you have Mbappe, you have Camavinga, Ciaran in midfield. So they're going to be there for a long time.
Yeah, I would have loved to see more of Camavinga. I really like him as a player, and I'm the same. I wonder, you know, moving on from Deschamps, would they just let the shackles off a little bit? But I mean, his record is pretty spectacular. You know, Euro final in 2016, champions of the world 2018. Okay, Switzerland was definitely a blip in the last Euros because I think they had a real chance of winning it again, or winning it, and then obviously get, you know, within a whisker. And like you say, also with the best player in the world now, we think Mbappe going forward, they're going to have a real chance. What about your old friend Cristiano Ronaldo? We had good discussions about him. I mean, I know Roy Keane is very biased towards Ronaldo, and it's probably something to do with kind of the Man United era and stuff like that. But one part of me does think, like, Ronaldo scores. Okay, he obviously doesn't score nearly as much as he used to, and he's obviously a massive presence. But he's constantly a danger on the pitch, and somehow he manages, you know, to get his name on the score sheet and stuff. But then obviously he was dropped, and, you know, his replacement went on to score a hat-trick in his second game. But anyway, give me your thoughts.
Yeah, well, look, I'm not his biggest fan, but as a person, but he's still been a phenomenal player. I know there is this recency bias in football as well, that we look at this tournament and he get judged on this tournament, you know, but he's 37 years of age. Like, we shouldn't be expecting that he's going to turn up and score 7 or 8 goals in the tournament. You know, the fact that he's even still playing is fantastic. You know, his scoring record has been phenomenal over the years. But yeah, it's just the other side of him that I don't like. You know, we spoke about how Messi led Argentina, you know, and was a real leader for them. Whereas I think what summed up Ronaldo was he was captain and they beat Uruguay, I think it was, and he spent more time trying to claim a goal that wasn't his, rather than just, most captains would say, it doesn't matter who scores, we got the 3 points, we're through to the next stage. Whereas Ronaldo was, you know, that was my goal, and that's all he was focused on. But
bizarre, like you'd wonder what Bruno Fernandes, for instance, is thinking in that situation, where the captain and the Portuguese FA apparently are trying to take the goal off him to give it to Ronaldo, you know, his teammate. Bizarre situation, really.
It is, and even the likes of Fernandes, I thought he was brilliant in this tournament, you know, and I think he came out of Ronaldo's shadow a bit, and Ronaldo being dropped maybe helped him a little bit, or, you know, and I think behind the scenes, I think the Portuguese manager kind of set the tone that Ronaldo wasn't going to be the main man right from the start of the tournament. And that kind of, you know, on track with the likes of Fernandes and other players to go and, you know, play to the best of their ability. They weren't just looking for Ronaldo to be the main man all the time. And it was interesting in the last group game, Portugal were through, and the manager rested a lot of their main players, but he kept Ronaldo on the team, and it was like, was he saying you have to prove yourself and this is a trial run, and you know, he was scoring that South Korea game and then got dropped for the last 16 match. But what a replacement for a young man to come in and score a hat-trick straight away. Just
brilliant.
No, it's the manager then can have no doubts that he made the right decision. But you know, I'd still at the same time, I wouldn't like Ronaldo to be judged just on what's happened in this tournament. Like, I think what he's done for football, he is amongst the all-time greats. You know, we talked about Messi scoring 50 goals a season. Ronaldo's been doing the same. We never thought we'd ever see someone having scoring rates like that over the long term, like over 10 to 15 seasons. And Ronaldo's been doing it to the highest level. And as well, he probably does need that ego. He probably does need to feel he's the main man to get to those heights, and if he feels he's not, he is going to play that little bit poor. So I can kind of understand the ego side of him as well, because he needs it.
Ronaldo was never going to age gracefully, was he? Like at the very end of his career, and even the type of player he is, where he depended on speed and power and everything like that. Whereas Messi has found that role for him, and even like you make a really good, interesting point. Even just that mentality, whereas like Messi probably knows that others have to do the running for him, but then he responds in the right way by leading the team and like showing those absolute flashes of brilliance, that no other player can produce, and even at this age. Whereas Ronaldo is expecting the running to be done for him, but without leading the team. He's still, introverted into himself in some ways, that it's all about him. Whereas he needs to kind of, like, remember when he came off injured in the 2016 Euro final, he was brilliant on the sideline. He was like leading the team, and, he was like a coach and a manager. And I kind of thought that, he's moving to another stage of his career. But he didn't. And it's probably finally caught up with him. So I had the idea, at least at some point in the tournament, of like what has happened to the African teams. And I know I had a bias towards. I don't think of Cameroon in 1990. I think of Nigeria in 94. To a lesser extent, Nigeria in 98, but. Sunday Alicia, and just so many great Nigerian players. And I suppose Senegal in 2002, Ghana in 2010, wasn't it? They missed out on the semi-final due to that thief handball, Suarez. Geez, I still am not over that. And I was kind of thinking, like, where are the African teams? And Egypt never do it, even though they dominate in the African Nations Cup and stuff. And then kind of you set me straight, lo and behold. Okay, Saudi Arabia beat Saudi Arabia are Middle Eastern, obviously, but Arab nation. But then Morocco. And like I have to say, I didn't see as much of Morocco as I would have liked. But anytime I saw them, I couldn't but be impressed by them and even their individual players and their technique and their tactics. I mean, they were excellent.
Yeah, and I think again it's a bit like Argentina. I think they have the passion to play for their nation, and they also had a manager who seemed to be very smart. Against Spain, I think their tactics were spot on. They sat back and just defended, and that's what you do against Spain. You let them have the ball, and just they're not going to create much in dangerous areas if you just let them have it. Morocco done that perfect, got the 0-0, and then won the shootout, and then Portugal. A little bit the same, but changed it up a bit. They were a bit more dangerous on the break against Portugal, whereas they soaked up the pressure. But then when they got the ball, they were committing men forward and they were looking to hit on the break. And, it was 1-0. Portugal could have equalised. But at the same time, Morocco had chances to make it 2 or 3-0. So, I thought they were really smart, really well set up. Same in the group stages against Belgium, 2-0 win as well. Similar to Portugal tactics, they're sitting back, but they're hitting on the break. And again, they could have beaten Belgium by more. And against France in the semi-final, 2-0 on paper seems like it's one-sided, but Morocco had a lot of the play in that. And had they got one back, I think the France goal was late enough anyway. But Morocco were creating chances; they were causing France problems. And again, I think it was down to the manager. I think he set up the team really well. And they also had. What you like to see in most World Cups is you have players coming from nowhere, the players you haven't heard of.
Yeah.
And Morocco, Amrabat, Unai in midfield were just fantastic. Like the ground they covered, their use of the ball was excellent as well. I think they were 2 stars of the World Cup. Like we knew about Hakimi, we knew about Ziyech, but these 2 lads in midfield really caught the eye for me anyway. But even going back to what we said about African football, like all 5 African teams won a game in this World Cup, and that's the first time that's happened.
Okay.
Then you have, I think, in all previous World Cups, African teams had never won more than 3 group games. This time they won 7 group games. So like that's huge improvement for them. You had Senegal getting through as well, even though they're missing their undoubted star player Mane. So I think that, you know, it was very good for the continent. And even good teams that didn't get through, like Cameroon beat Brazil, and for them that was nearly as good as getting
it's great.
through. You know, one of the standout moments for me is Abubakar scoring the winner against Brazil, taking his red card, shaking hands at the ref, and walking off with the biggest smile on his face. Cameroon had beaten Brazil, like that's all that mattered to him. So,
that was World Cup final, wasn't it?
Yeah. And you had Tunisia beating France as well, which is another massive result for them. And Ghana were probably, you know, a bit disappointing in the last group game. They played great football. You know, they'd one of the stars of the tournament in Kudos as well, who was excellent in the group games, I thought. Young lad with Ajax, I think he's going to be really, you know, one for the future. And they just came up short against Uruguay. I thought they were disappointing in that match, but they still won a game at the World Cup. They had a great match against Portugal, which was 3-2. So, you know, I think it's been a good World Cup for the African teams. And even the Asian teams as well. You know, you had 3 teams from Asian qualifiers getting through to the knockout stages in Japan, South Korea, and Australia. So I think that was one of the great things about the World Cup. There was a good spread, and it wasn't just the usual European, South American teams dominating. It was other teams were coming up to the fore.
And even, I know it's very kind of Anglo-centric here, but even having Australia and USA coming through as well, like you can imagine what that does for the audiences around the world as well. And even like leading into the World Cup in USA, Canada, and Mexico. And actually, by the way, Canada, like even though they were knocked out early, they actually did quite well. You know, they played quite well at times and everything like that. So yeah, I agree. It was really nice to see Japan do well, South Korea, you know, but also a lot of the big teams did well also, you know, which is, you do need that as well. I remember at times in the 2002 World Cup, do you remember when like South Korea ended up in the semi-finals, Japan in the quarterfinals, I think, and like all the big teams were getting knocked out constantly. You do miss having the big teams there as well. And I think having a final of Argentina and France was something else, you know, like you want the kind of powerhouse teams. But yeah, it's exciting stuff. Okay, we better talk briefly about England. So I'm actually quite torn. Well, no, I'm not torn. I think there's 2 different trains of thought here, where on the one hand, this is another good step forward for England. It was positive. They played very well at times. Against France, they weren't like dominated by a completely better team like they were, you know, at times against Italy in the Euros and by who was Croatia in 2018 World Cup. So like this is another step forward for this England team. A lot of good young players equipped themselves really well. I think Bellingham, it was an absolute star. I think he's brilliant. In some ways, maybe it's no surprise he's living abroad and playing in a different country, you know, maybe. But on the other hand, you could say, again, it's another kind of missed opportunity. And like I would go back to, let's say, like a lot of people would, to the 2020 Euros played in 2021 against Italy. Like they will probably never get as good an opportunity to win a major tournament as being 1-0 up in the final at home, you know, the crowd behind you, etc. And they somehow blow it. And it seems to be always that they do well, but as soon as they come up against a really good technical team, the first team that they come up against, they lose and they go home. Which side of the fence are you on that?
Yeah, I just think it felt a bit different for England this year. I think other years they've got knocked out in the quarterfinals and they themselves probably felt they underachieved, but I was looking and thinking, no, that's where you are, like that's your level. You know, you look back at 2002, Brazil beat them in the quarterfinal. They were never better than Brazil. So, you know, that wasn't really a missed opportunity. Same in 2006, I think they lost the quarterfinal to Portugal.
Yeah.
The Italy team in 2006, England were not at that level, you know. So previous tournaments and even Croatia, going back to 2018, Croatia were the better team, you know, the better footballers. So I think they found their level in other tournaments, whereas this time I think they were as good, if not better than France in that quarterfinal game. probably just lacked a bit of luck on the night. You know, some refereeing decisions could have gone for them. But another thing they lacked is just that know-how to win. You know, France didn't play great and just knew how to win the match. England were probably the better team and found a way to lose. And I think that's probably the regret they'd have. And the same in the final last year. You know, they were every bit as good as Italy, got the perfect start to go goal up early on and didn't build on it. You know, they kind of retreated into their shell in that final a bit. Whereas this year I felt it's the one time that probably would have regrets because they were every bit as good as France and the better team on the night. So, you know, it's probably a stepping stone. It's still a young enough team. I think they're not too far away. You have to say, like, you know, it's just that final step of knowing how to win those big games.
That's it.
Like you mentioned, every time they come up against a team that's maybe ranked higher than them in the world, they never beat them. You know, and that's something they have to overcome because they are as good as those teams.
I was going to say, I think the whole apparatus, the whole process, the juggernaut that kind of the FA and Southgate has created, along with like the academy system, the EPPP, you know, the pathways in the professional academies, the facilities in the English club, the money in the Premier League game. I think they've finally, like, they've copped it. You know, they've kind of, it's like they've found the solution finally. And now I can see them, they'll win underage tournaments, you know, Euros, maybe even Worlds. They'll always be thereabouts in the senior, you know, and definitely in Euros and in World Cups. I suppose it's like you say, it's that last final step now that they've yet to crack, you know, that code they've yet to crack. And whether that's a different manager who's a serial winner, but like who, you know, what English coach is a serial winner, you know? I don't think they'll go down the route of a foreign coach.
Like, it's, you know, there was talks of Southgate losing his job. You know, would he stay on? But you only really get rid of him if you have someone better to come in. And the top managers nowadays, they don't want to be managing international teams. They want club teams. So get rid of Southgate if you have someone better to come in. But I don't think England had. I don't think there was top managers lining up to take that England job. You know, maybe 5-10 years down the line, you might have a Guardiola or a Klopp might want to move into international management, you know, something like that. But at the moment, I don't think England had a better replacement than Southgate. And, you know, I'm not convinced by Southgate either. I don't think he's you know, the main man. But to be fair to him, he changed the culture there. You know, he has made the team a bit stronger. He's changed the mentality of it as well. And then you look at Bellingham, Saka, Foden, they have 3 world-class players that are going to be around for probably the next 2 World Cups. And the academy system, like you say, it's producing just, you know,
brilliant
so many
players.
talents. You know, just Bellingham's 17, 18, whatever he was, and there's another couple of lads coming right behind him ready to take his place again. You know, so like you're working in the youth system over there. There's some fantastic players, you know, playing under 17s, under 19s in academy football. So I think they have the players, and they will have the players for the next 10 years, but it's just that winning mentality. I think they'll get it, unfortunately. But then we're saying as well, this France team is going to be around for a long time. So, and you have Spain with Pedri and Gavi, and you know,
I suppose that
young teams as well. Germany, you know, they're producing a few stars. So probably football overall is in a good place. But England won't be too far away.
Yeah, and that's the point, I suppose, isn't it? That they're so close, but obviously, like in 4 years' time, France, we think, will be better. I would expect. Maybe not Argentina. You know, Spain will definitely be better. Germany will be better. I'd expect Italy will be back in there. We'd expect Brazil, you know, lots of good young players as well. So yeah, it never gets easier. And I suppose when you get your opportunity, you have to grasp it. But I agree. I do like Bellingham, Foden, Saka, Rashford steps up with England, you know, more or less. Obviously, I think a new striker for Kane, or can Rashford step up maybe, you know, and Another one, actually, he's kind of gone off the radar. Jordan Sancho, who really looked like a top player a few years ago, has gone off the boil a little bit recently.
I think he'll come back though. He's still quite young, and I think he has the talent.
Yeah, huge talent.
Man United look like they're improving this year, and that will help him as well. I think he'll get back to decent levels as well.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be too concerned about him in the long run.
Yeah, exactly. Excuse me. Just finally, then, because I've really enjoyed our chat. It's been really good. First of all, is to mention there is one part of me that thinks it's like when these World Cups go to different parts of the world. It went to South Africa, Russia. I think kind of not worth mentioning now with subsequent events, but it can build a game, and it can bring interest. And when it went to Korea and Japan, a lot of Asian people from other countries even were proud and happy. I know a lot of Arabic people, Middle Eastern people, North African people really enjoyed the World Cup being in Qatar. So I understand that and how you can help build a game and shine a light and everything like that. But I can't get beyond the fact myself, my own personal opinion, without any kind of professionalism to it, that I don't think the World Cup should have been held in Qatar. I don't think it was the right country to hold it in. They didn't have the infrastructure. If you looked at some of the stadiums where they were, less than half full at kickoff, the migrant issue, a lot of migrants died working there, the working conditions on the stadiums. I don't feel it was the right place to award the World Cup, and also, speculation about fraud and stuff like that. Obviously, you can then put that to one side and say the football was amazing, and you could potentially say maybe alongside 1986 might have been the best World Cup ever. Maybe 1970, 1986 are the ones that kind of jump out. Probably the best final ever, you could say. Maybe again 86, 1970 was special in some ways. So those two things can go hand in hand in some ways, I think.
No, I agree with that, and I think most people feel the same. You can separate the football side of it and what FIFA have done. And like you say, it's a world game. The tournament does deserve to be shared around the world, and for each region to host it at some stage. So it's only right that the tournament is in the Middle East at some stage. It's just the way they got the tournaments, and definitely corruption involved there as well. And how they got it. Then you talk about the human rights record as well, which is the number of migrants reportedly that had died, building not just the stadiums, the infrastructure around it as well. And we probably never know the true numbers in that. I completely agree. The tournament should not have been there. The way they got it should never have happened. Yeah. And once it got to that stories came out about how they were got. I think I've seen a documentary about the people that were involved in the voting and that, and once those stories start coming out, they should have been taken off them, really. There had the evidence there for the tournament to be taken away from Qatar, but I'm just shocked that it still went ahead. But then, like you said, you separate that from the football. The football was fantastic, and and I think you can separate it. You can separate FIFA and how the football more or less belongs to the people. The football is for us, and we should separate that from FIFA. But I think, like I said, I think each region does deserve to have it. Qatar probably wasn't the right country, but the Middle East definitely deserves to host the tournament too.
Yeah, it's hard to choose a country in the Middle East, which is an appropriate country.
and as well, we are obviously watching it on TV and we think it's a great World Cup, but I think just reading stories of people who are there saying the atmosphere wasn't fantastic. It didn't feel like a proper World Cup either. And it is that congested. It's in such a small area, and actually. The host nations games were probably the worst atmosphere of the whole tournament, which is very surprising.
That was crazy.
To get behind it.
Yeah.
And they had 12 years to prepare for it, 5 years to build a team. And the team went out without, a whimper, and the fans never seemed to get into it. I think the first game against Ecuador, the stadium was empty with 20 minutes to go.
Yeah. And like the host nation always add a huge amount to the tournament. Even if they're beaten in the first round in the group stages or whatever. Like that was really very strange. I found that and really disappointing. I mean, something like the Euros in 2 years' time in Germany is in ways a perfect location. Relatively smaller country, good infrastructure, great fans. It should be a brilliant tournament. But yeah, of course, like especially the World Cup now, it being so big, you nearly need multi-nations and ideally spread around the world because we can't get it in Europe all the time. Actually that's oh, by the way, so where would you rank the final and where would you rank the tournament as a whole then? Thinking back over the years, multiple tournaments.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking about this last week, like where would you rank this tournament? And last week when I was thinking about it, I was thinking it was probably one of the best tournaments we've ever had, but it was lacking that epic match or epic moment that you remember forever. Like 1970 had Carlos Alberto goal, and then it had a fantastic semi-final between Italy and Germany. 82 was another great tournament that had the Rossi hat-trick. It had another great semi-final between West Germany and France. 86 had Maradona against England. So like all the great tournaments have an epic match or epic moment. And yesterday with the final, this World Cup got that, a match that we remember forever. You had you had the legend that's Messi, and then he's understudy, Mbappe had them producing the goods. Not just in the final, but throughout the whole tournament. So I think it's probably
up there, isn't it?
The best tournament ever. And I remember 82 would be probably my first one I remember, and that was a fantastic tournament. But I think this said everything you'd want from a tournament. When you think about World Cups, you want great matches, which we have. We had lots of good matches. You had good football. I don't think there was too many negative teams. There was no real parking of the bus. I think every team tried to play football and look to win matches. What else do you want from a World Cup? You want surprises. It had probably the right amount of surprises, like you said. You want the top teams getting to the finals, but you had your Japan beating Spain and Germany. You had South Korea beating Portugal. So you had the right amount of surprises. You want drama. The last round of group games was fantastic.
Brilliant.
Drama, the Spain-Germany group in particular, like that night was just crazy. And I think probably the first World Cup where you had every group went down to the wire. There's something up for grabs on the last day in every group. So you had that drama. The quarterfinals were pure drama as well. All the 4 quarterfinals were on a knife edge. They could have gone either way. So overall, I think it was a fantastic tournament. I really enjoyed it. I probably the time of year helps as well. Like,
do you think so?
You're at the end of a long season. The top players are playing for trophies right up till probably the beginning of June, and they're tired. They're probably playing through injuries, and only playing at 70%, and then they get the end of the season and they're into a World Cup. Whereas this World Cup, the vast majority of players were at their peak.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think it showed. I think there was good energy levels in all the matches. There was no real slackening off. There was no teams playing for nil-nils because they were tired. Every team went at it, and good fitness levels. So
that's good. It's an interesting point. I somehow did. I suppose I was more club centric of just thinking the disruption of the club calendar and stuff like that. And I know with QPR lads and stuff. But also, you'd be a bit of a traditionalist thinking that, well, the World Cup has to be in the summer. And I mean, maybe from a fan experience of like, there's nothing nicer than, grabbing a beer outside, watching the World Cup in the height of the summer and stuff like that, which is amazing. But like, on the other hand, I remember somebody mentioned tweeting, just saying that, like, sitting at home by the fire, watching games at 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, was it 3 o'clock? 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock,
4 and 7, I think.
4 and 7, exactly. I had and the thing is that you know me, I wouldn't watch, like, if Man United were playing against Brighton, I wouldn't watch it. Whereas give me the World Cup, and it could be Ecuador versus, you know, whoever, Costa Rica or Qatar. It could be a great game. You know, it could be rubbish, it could be terrible, but it could be an absolute cracker. And
Yeah,
there's just
and
something
we got that
really special,
like,
isn't there?
what's that?
Like there's something really special about the World Cup. You know, it throws up these games.
There is, and I think one day in the group stage summed that up. You had was it Cameroon were playing Serbia, and
Yeah.
you know, you think that's not much to expect here, and it's a 3-3 draw, and then that's followed by Ghana and South Korea's 3-2. Like, you know, these nations that never play against each other, and they're producing cracking matches, and you know, like you said, it was a Brighton against you know, Southampton or something, you mightn't bother watching these games, but there's just something interesting about these teams that don't play each other too often. Different footballing styles, different footballing cultures as well, so you have a mix of tactics as well, and just adds to it. It adds to the whole spectacle of a World Cup.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, really interesting. Yeah, I agree. I can't think of a better World Cup, and I can't think of a better World Cup final, I'd have to say. Just briefly to finish off then, what about Ireland? Can we qualify? And even though I hate the idea, we've had, as we just said, let's call it the best World Cup ever, and then FIFA go along and change it from 32 teams, which works perfectly with the group stages, everything, which were amazing, as you say, and the last 16, and they change it now to a 48 team World Cup, and like there'll be loads of different, you know, repercussions to this. I mean, like a single nation would probably never host the World Cup again, I would say, or maybe unless the likes of Germany, France, England, something like that. But 48 nations is a lot. The permutations were, it was going to be groups of 3. Now FIFA, after watching this World Cup, change their mind and say, no, we're not going to change groups of 4. So how that's going to work as well, you know, into the knockout stages. So anyway, I hate the idea, but there's obviously a slightly better chance the likes of Ireland will qualify. And should we expect Ireland to be qualifying, or are we just not at that level now anymore?
Yeah, we're probably not at that level at the moment. But the only thing I would be encouraged by is that the team that we have, there's a lot of good young players coming through. You know, you just look at the defence. You have Nathan Collins, Omar Bamadeli in defence. You have Darragh O'Shea, another good defender. So we do have young, you know, we have Obafemi and Tripe Hard up front, and a few other young lads coming through. Aaron Conley hopefully can get back to the levels he was at a few years ago. You know, it's probably the next few years are crucial for us. Like, with the way Brexit's happened, I don't think as many Irish youngsters are going to get over to English clubs. Are certainly not the same volume that we've had in previous years. So how that pans out is going to be probably deciding Ireland's future, really. Like, will those young players go to Europe, and you know, and maybe get a better education in Europe, you know, footballing education. I think we've seen it already. I think there's a few lads have gone to Italy. We had, you know, a young lad from Wexford's gone to Italy, to Udinese. We've had a lad from Cork with Inter Milan as well, I think. So, you know, with that Brexit, there's a lot of pressure on the FAI then, you know, what to do with those youngsters that aren't going. Are we going to be able to develop them in Ireland? And I think a lot of focus should be put into that, you know, because I believe we have the coaches, we have the facilities, we have everything. It's just getting the right people in charge of that process. But I think going forward, I think probably the next Euros is a bit tough. We're in with France and Holland, you know, I can't see progressing out of that. But but it's great experience for the players, you know. Like I said, those young defenders coming up against Mbappe and that French team, it can only bring them on. I'm not convinced about Stephen Kenny yet. I think he's done okay, but not fantastic either. But at the same time, you know, what's the alternative? You know, he is trying to play football. You know, give him one more tournament, see how he gets on. But we really need to start to bring through more young players, and we've started that at the moment. Hopefully, you know, with them not being able to go to England in future, that won't set us back. But if they can get to Europe, it's as good a football education as anywhere.
It'd be good. It'd be great. Yeah, it'd be another kind of avenue, I think, and it'd be amazing culturally as well, and they'd mature as young people. Like, actually, with Stephen Kenny, if to win, I know it sounds, obvious, but to win a few more games in the Nation League would actually have a massive impact on us as well, because our seeding keeps dropping down further and further. So it means that like we are in a group with the likes of France and Holland, and I can't remember, are Serbia in our group as well, or somebody? Greece. Okay.
Malta, I think, yeah.
Okay, so like we're coming up against really good teams, whereas what we need is like to come up against one really top team, another kind of second tier team where we might have a chance of making the playoff, and then it's the luck of the draw about who you get in the playoff and everything. But like, because we're losing so many games in and around the tournaments, it's just dropping our seeding down further, and it makes it even more difficult. But yeah, I mean, look at Croatia. Like they're a country of what, 5 million people.
Yeah,
they've been
similar population. Yeah.
Yeah, they've been in 6 tournaments as Croatia. They've got to the final once and semi-final twice. Yeah. They've come second once and third twice out of 6 tournaments. Yeah. It's incredible. Like, I'm not saying we need to do that, but with the, as you said, right structures, and we've a good coach education pathway and stuff like that. There's no reason why we can't, do better, at least anyway. Okay, great. Thanks, Derek. I have to say I really enjoyed that. I think that was maybe my most enjoyable podcast. So yeah. Don't say that to Ross Bennett and Joe Coulter and the lads. They've only done 68 other ones. I said to you, you were the Johnny Giles of the analyst, and you said no, more Liam Brady.
Yeah, or maybe even Roger Miller is my first podcast at the age of we weren't at the age.
Yeah, very good. No, okay, brilliant. No,
really enjoyable. Thanks, Ciaran.
Great, yeah, really good. I enjoyed it. Some really good analysis, and I think you've got an in-depth knowledge and experience of the players and teams and everything like that, and obviously a real love and grow for the World Cup. Okay, thanks everybody for listening. Head over to deelysportscience.com and you can see about membership there. We'll be running a sale over the Christmas, and as I mentioned, have a look out for sporthorizon.co.uk, a new business and course we're launching for data analysis and data visualization. Okay, thanks Derek, and thanks everybody for listening.